he's not going to be influenced if he feels to protect Israel and also to protect himself, to keep himself out of jail. He's going to take action where action needs to be taken. And so this is an example. He brushed Trump aside after a while and said, I'm going to do this.
Let's start with that strike then. Israel carrying out a series of strikes on nuclear sites in Iran. Well, they were part of what the Israeli Prime Minister has called Operation Rising Lion. He said that Iran was a threat to Israel's very survival. Israel have now declared a state of emergency. We've heard from Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, saying there was no US involvement or assistance in the strikes. In fact, Donald Trump had been urging the Israeli Prime Minister not to act militarily and instead pursue a diplomatic way forward. There have been talks scheduled between Iran and the US this weekend. The US, though, did seem to have some warning of what was to come. The Trump administration, as we were talking about yesterday on Times Radio, moved to protect American personnel in the region yesterday. Well, let's find out more. Jim Townsend is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for Europe and Nato, who joins us now. Jim, thank you for staying up late to speak to us. Can we start by just reminding us of the context here? Israel had been making publicly that they had lost patience with Iran's nuclear weapons development.
Well, that's right. And I think something else, too, is if you remember when there was the major Israeli strike into Iran, just a few months ago, they knocked out a lot of the Iranian air defense, leaving Iran defenseless in a lot of ways without their air defense, and I guess part of their air force probably was taken down as well. But for sure, at that point, Iran was the most vulnerable, and I think Israel back then wanted to put the knife in. And there have been discussions over time with Trump to go ahead and join us in this attack. Let's finish this now. And the U.S. held back and instead began these talks. And so here we are now where I think Israel has lost patience, not just with Iran in terms of the talks, but with the United States. And Netanyahu said, I'm finishing this and I'm finishing it right now.
Part of this is because earlier in the week we had a report from the UN that said they believed that Iran had enough enriched uranium to produce 9 nuclear bombs. Do you think that is being used as an excuse for Israel to think, right, Iran are vulnerable right now. If we're going to act, we can so, and we'll do it right now?
Well, I agree. I think so. The idea that Iran had this capability and could have a breakout, as they say, in a matter of weeks and develop a weapon, that's kind of been around for a while. Everyone kind of knew this. I don't think this was necessarily new information, except that it came from the IAEA. And so I do think that was an excuse. I think Netanyahu has been itching to finish the job. I mean, look what he's done with Lebanon. He's done this with Gaza. He is taking this opportunity presented by that attack in October, using this as an opportunity to finish off a lot of those groups or a country like Iran, is to try to push that threat to Israel as far away as he can.
I mean, Iranian military officials had already spoken publicly about the fact that they would retaliate if something like this happened. What do you imagine, Jim, that Israel will be preparing for in terms of retaliation from Iran?
Well, I think in the first instance, it's drone attacks, missile attacks, whatever that Iran still has, because they've used a lot of it already a month or two ago, in a retaliatory strike. So I think in the first instance, within the first 24, 48 hours, it'll be that kind of thing. Israel has the Iron Dome. I think the U.S. is going to be assisting in the defense of Israel as well. We have a Aegis-class destroyer in the Eastern Mediterranean. We've got an aircraft carrier with a carrier aviation that can shoot down some of these missiles, as we've seen in the past. So I think the U.S. will help defend. But there's going to be a longer-term retaliation, I'm sure. I think Iran can be very crafty, as we all know. And I think there's other things that they can do in the coming months in retaliation. That's not just missiles and drones, but other things as well.
The US have made clear, we've had a statement from Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, that they were not involved in providing assistance to Israel. And actually, Donald Trump had asked Benjamin Netanyahu not to do this. What does that say to you, actually, in terms of Donald Trump's authority or his clout or his sway to have influence on Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, it's a great point. It's an interesting point, and there's a lot of people pointing the finger at Trump and saying you're not as influential as you thought you were, and that's certainly true. But I think that two other things to think about as well. One, this is also Netanyahu. He doesn't care who he's talking to. He's not going to be influenced if he feels to protect Israel and also to protect himself, to keep himself out of jail. He's going to take action where action needs to be taken. And so this is an example. He brushed Trump aside after a while and said, I'm going to do this. So it's a lot about Netanyahu as well. And the second thing, I think it also talks about the dependence that Israel no longer has militarily on the United States in terms of assisting them.
Yeah.
Past presidents have had influence because we held the reins on things like intelligence and air-to-air refueling and enablers that would help the Israeli Air Force make a strike. And that dependence on the United States isn't there anymore. And so there's also, I think, a greater feeling of being independent of the United States in terms of making decisions. So I think all of that came together in the form of Netanyahu, who brushed Trump aside and went and did what he wanted to do. So yes, it does say something about Trump, but I think it also says a lot about Israel today versus what we've been used to seeing in the past years.
Jim, thank you so much. Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for Europe and NATO. There had been scheduled talks between the US and Iran this weekend. You wonder now what they will achieve, if anything, or even if they will go ahead. We'll be across that here.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. So too do the brave people of Iran, and I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near. And when that happens, the great friendship between our two ancient peoples will flourish once again.